In the last episode, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the man who started the war, had died. One has to wonder how the war will progress. I'm Stefan, and this is Japan at War. Ming Supreme Commander Yang Hao was currently on the road from Seoul on August 12th. He had been dismissed and now had to answer for the accusations made by Board of War official Ding Yingtai in Beijing in person. King Sanjo, whom had felt no one had done more for the Korean people than Yang, saw him off and had his sedan chair and officials placed in the middle of the road to show that they didn't want him to leave. He, of course, had to leave. The man on the way to take over Yang Hao's position was named Wan, but he wouldn't be there until the end of the year though. In Japan, Toyotomi Hideyoshi's death on September 18th was decided to be kept a secret by the 5 regents. For over a week, they sent out reports indicating that Hideyoshi was still alive. This was done so that Japan wouldn't collapse in the chaos, but also because the days before his actual death, Hideyoshi had made the call to recall all troops in Korea. It was feared that if the commanders knew that Hideyoshi was dead, they may not comply with these orders and would then continue the war. During September the 25th, letters were sent to the commanders in Korea, all with Hideyoshi's seal. These letters not only stated that Hideyoshi was still alive, but was actually recovering from the illness that he had. Not only that, but emissaries were on their way to Busan, and these men carried orders that the commanders were to negotiate with the Ming and Joseon for an end to the war. A little while back on September 18th, a new Ming-Joseon army marched south again. The force, just like at Ulsan, moved in 3 columns. There was also a change in plan though. Instead of focusing on one defensive location, they would instead attack multiple all at once. Commander Ma Gui would assault Ulsan once again. General Dong Yiyuan would attack Shimizu Yoshihira's Sachon fortress. And General Liu Ting would attack Konishi Yukinaga's Suncheon fortress. He wouldn't do it alone though. Korean Commander-in-Chief Kwan Yeol would join him in this attack. This was an incredible force. An estimated 70,000 men were on the way to assault the Japanese. And on top of this, 30,000 men were waiting in reserve in Seoul. This of course wasn't all though. Remember, Ming Admiral Chen Lin had joined forces with Korean hero Yi Sun-sin. Chen had almost 20,000 men with him at this time, and Yi Sun-sin had an estimated 8,000. Board of War official Ding Yingtai was currently on the way back to Seoul. He was there to investigate even further. According to the Sanjo Silic, he felt extremely uncomfortable when he passed through Liaoyang. Yang Hao was extremely well liked here, you see. He felt so threatened here that he supposedly stayed indoors while there and inspected his food vigorously to make sure it wasn't poison. Once he reached Korea, however, he regained his confidence. It wouldn't be unfair to say he was even being arrogant, as this guy actually sent word ahead of him that Dingzhis, the highest ranking Ming official in Korea, had been added to his list of guilty people. Ding Yingtai arrived outside of Seoul's walls on October 3rd. King Sanjo, though it was customary, was not there to greet him. However, he was there to greet Zhu Guanlan, the Board of War official in favor of the war. Now this was a tactical decision made by the king to make it clear that Ding Yingtai was not welcome. Both of these officials would set to work to discover the real casualty number of the Siege of Ulsan. Zhu Guanlan report would include the testimonies of Korean officials and commanders about their personal headcounts. From this, he determined that the death for the Ming should be around 2,000. Ding Yingtai, of course, wasn't satisfied with either the number or the methods used to reach this number. For his investigation, he had several people arrested and interrogated. The homes of officials and officers were also searched for any potential evidence. His conclusion was that at least 10,000 had died. Now this was only a small part of his investigation though. He had accused several of the pro-war officials of corruption. And in fact, he felt everyone who was pro-war was suspicious. He wanted to know who at the root of all this was to blame for this extreme loss of wealth and manpower. He concluded it was the Koreans that were ultimately to blame. Not only this, but somehow the Koreans were at fault for the Japanese invading. They had, after all, waited a very long time to alert the Ming of the Japanese intent to invade. He also went on to claim that this was perhaps a plot by King Sanjo and his government in the eventual conflict between the Chinese and Japanese to lay claim to incredibly fertile land north of the Yalu River. He was essentially accusing the Joseon government of treason. There wasn't any evidence of this, of course. Interestingly enough, he was using history to make these claims. See, during the ancient Kogyo kingdom, the kings at the time considered those lands theirs. So the Joseon must think the same, right? Ding Yingtai's report was leaked on October the 20th. This prompted King Sanjo to put out this document. I am China's loyal vassal. When the warlord Hideyoshi first threatened us, I did my duty and cut off all contact with him. For this, my kingdom was attacked and my house destroyed. I was forced on the road like a refugee. Through all this, I kept my integrity as a loyal vassal. Even if I was about to die 10,000 times, I will regret nothing. Despite this, I have been charged with treason. I have personally witnessed how this deceitful Ding Yingtai has been so reckless and slanders many who have been both loyal and honest. He seems intent on upsetting the universe's grand design. For this reason, I declare with all my strength the truth, so that the emperor might see through the lies of this malicious specter. The king at this point was expecting punishment, or even exoneration. He decided that he wouldn't be able to sit on the throne and perform his duties, so he decided to retire from office and went into seclusion. After all this, matters King Sanjo had previously handled were to be handled by the crown prince. The Joseon government understandably descended into chaos. Several officials, such as Yu Song-yong, submitted memorials beseeching the king to take his office back. The king at this time had fallen ill, most likely due to the extreme emotional distress that Ding Yingtai's document had caused. Joseon officials told the king that if he came out of the room, at the very least the physician would be able to help him. The king refused, saying that only the celestial throne in Beijing would cure him by exonerating him. After several memorials by government officials, King Sanjo finally relented on October 27th and returned to his throne. Xingji would meet with the king to let him know that Zhu Guanlan's report suggested that the king be cleared of all charges, and that there were strong feelings against Ding Yingtai. Despite all of this, the king and several Korean officials would harbor strong feelings that would affect the Joseon and Ming going forward in the coming months. And this is where I will leave you. Ming and Joseon preparing for massive assaults against the Japanese, and the king being accused of treason. I'll see you next time.